Look at the remains of Reactor 4. A gaping crater exposes a burning nuclear core, projecting ionizing radiation into the night sky over Ukraine. It is difficult to reconcile that apocalyptic reality with the origin of the disaster. This clinical environment is a Soviet rbmk control room, identical to the one where the sequence of events began. On April 25, 1986, the operators of Unit 4 prepared for a highly specific safety test. They needed to know if the mechanical momentum of a coasting down turbine generator could keep the main emergency coolant pumps running during a total blackout, just long enough for backup diesel generators to kick in. The test was scheduled for the highly trained day shift, but a regional grid controller in Kyiv demanded a 9-hour delay to meet local electricity needs. By the time clearance was finally given, the day shift had gone home. An unprepared, severely fatigued night shift took control of the complex experiment. Overseeing them was Deputy Chief Engineer Anatoly Dyatlov. Dyatlov maintained strict authority over the control room, frequently berating subordinates who questioned his commands. He was also in line for a promotion, and successfully completing this test meant securing a lucrative state completion bonus. The pressure to meet this bureaucratic milestone superseded standard operating procedures. An exhausted crew was ordered to run a dangerous mechanical test under severe psychological stress, stripping away the human layer of the reactor's defense. The 9-hour delay had severe physical consequences for the uranium inside the core. Running an rbmk reactor at half power for that length of time causes a massive buildup of xenon-135, a highly effective neutron-absorbing isotope. In nuclear physics, this is known as reactor poisoning. The xenon choked the nuclear chain reaction. Just as the night shift assumed control, the core's thermal power unexpectedly plummeted to near zero. Standard protocol dictated shutting the reactor down entirely. Instead, Dyatlov ordered the operators to manually withdraw the control rods. To force the power back up and overcome the xenon pit, they began pulling the primary defense mechanisms completely out of the core. This schematic shows the massive scale of the rbmk core and the distribution of its fuel channels. By the time the operators stabilized the power, almost all of the 211 control rods had been fully withdrawn. The computer calculated an operating reactivity margin of only 8 equivalent rods remaining. The absolute minimum safety limit was 15. The reactor was critically unstable. To satisfy a production schedule, the operators had bypassed the core's defenses, pushing the physical limits of the machine to the edge of collapse. At 1:23:40 a.m., the safety test officially began. The turbine stop valves were closed. As the turbine slowed, the coolant pumps began to lose power. The flow rate of water through the reactor dropped, and large pockets of steam rapidly formed in the lower core. Recognizing the rising danger, Senior Reactor Control Engineer Leonid Tuptunov reached for a failsafe. He pressed the AZ-5 emergency shutdown button, a command designed to drop all remaining control rods back into the core and safely terminate the reaction. But Soviet rbmk control rods contained a fatal design compromise. The rods were made of boron, which absorbs neutrons and stops the reaction. However, to prevent water from filling the empty channel when the rod was withdrawn, designers attached a 4.5-meter displacer tip made of graphite. Graphite does not stop the reaction, it accelerates it. This cross-section shows the rod's architecture. The graphite displacer sits centered, surrounded by liquid coolant. As AZ-5 drove the rods downward, graphite tips entered the lower core first, displacing water. This injected a massive spike of positive reactivity into an already unstable core. The operators had triggered the exact mechanism meant to save them. Soviet cost-saving measures had produced a system where the ultimate emergency kill switch acted as a detonator. The thermal power spiked to more than 100 times the reactor's maximum capacity. The remaining water flashed to steam instantly. The resulting pressure wave blew the 2,000-ton upper biological shield completely off the reactor vessel, exposing the shattered core. Back in the control room, the instruments failed to capture the scale of the destruction. Plant leadership, including Dyatlov, chose to believe that only a localized cooling tank had ruptured. They refused to accept that an rbmk core could physically explode, prioritizing ideological certainty over the physical evidence raining down outside. Fire brigades from the nearby station arrived within minutes. They were told they were responding to a standard electrical fire on the roof of the turbine hall. This CIA translation of a Soviet report documents the reality those men faced. The firemen had no special equipment, no breathing apparatus, and no dosimeters. They fought burning lumps of radioactive graphite in canvas uniforms and rubber boots. The first responders absorbed lethal doses of radiation in minutes. A culture of systemic denial began claiming lives immediately, as institutional blindness overrode basic physical reality. Just 3 kilometers away, the sun rose over the city of Pripyat. 49,000 civil defense monitors recorded radiation levels off the scale, yet the Soviet state enacted a strict information blackout. Police barricaded the city exits, while the local population was kept entirely in the dark. It would be 36 hours before an evacuation was finally ordered. The silence extended to the highest levels of the Soviet government. General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev and the Politburo refused to address the public or the international community for weeks, desperate to protect the geopolitical image of the USSR. The truth only broke through the blackout because scientists at the Forsmark Nuclear Power Plant in Sweden, over 1,000 kilometers away, detected severe radiation anomalies on the boots of their own workers, forcing the Soviets to finally admit to an incident. The state's immediate instinct for self-preservation effectively weaponized the nuclear fallout. Maintaining the facade of Soviet competence became a higher priority than protecting civilian lives. Clearing the roof of Unit 3 presented an impossible engineering challenge. The radiation fields were so intense that the gamma rays instantly destroyed the circuitry of the remote-controlled robots, paralyzing them almost immediately. Faced with the failure of mechanical technology, the military command turned to human labor. Over 3,800 military reservists were deployed to the roof. They became known as biorobots, clad in crude, heavy aprons, fabricated from lead sheets torn off the walls of local facilities. The conditions allowed only 90-second sprints onto the roof. On the sound of an alarm, a worker would run out, shovel a single load of radioactive graphite over the edge, and run back inside. In that minute and a half, a man absorbed a lifetime occupational limit of radiation. This mass human sacrifice was the direct result of technical debt and administrative ambitions that bypassed safety protocols to secure state completion bonuses. Today, the new safe confinement structure arches over the remains of Reactor 4. It is an engineering marvel designed to entomb the ruins for a century. It stands as the final verdict on a system of administrative evil, one where protecting the geopolitical image of the state took precedence over the survival of its people.